So, this is the story of my summer-long quest to cross all of Russia with only my thumb and my legs. It took me over 24,000 kilometers through a remarkably diverse and beautiful Russia, much of which is often overlooked by the average tourist. It's a story that took me through the jaw-dropping Caucasian mountains, the rich culture and stomach-stuffing hospitality of the Caucasus people, an inordinate amount of World War II memorials, some good dogs and cats, some alien-looking mountains, the deepest lake in the world, some empty roads, and finally, the other side of Russia. I could almost see Japan from there. This trip was conceived in my head long ago and slowly fought its way into reality over the past 2 years. Originally, the plan was just to follow the Trans-Siberian Railway, making stops along the way. It's the longest railroad in the world, leading from Moscow all the way to Vladivostok, and covers most of the developed parts of Siberia. Plus, I just really like trains. But after living in Russia for the last year and a half, that just seemed too simple. There's so much more to explore. So, I expanded my route to include the places I had since added to my Russia bucket list. I did most of my planning for this trip spontaneously. When I left, all I had was a list of intriguing places along my general route and the dates of a few longer hikes set in stone. I also bought a new backpack and a cool yellow hat. So, I guess you could say I was ready for adventure. But where to go first? I decided to check the US Embassy for some travel tips, and I came across this helpful travel advertisement. After reading it, I was sold. It sounds just like my type of adventure. But on a more serious note, the Northern Caucasus has gotten much safer in the last few years, and such occurrences are becoming rarer and rarer. There is still, of course, some unrest, and one should always exercise caution when traveling, wherever you are. The Caucasus, in my opinion, is one of the most awe-inspiring and culturally rich parts of Russia. It's a must-see for anyone wanting to break out of the Moscow-Petersburg bubble. I cannot recommend it enough. So without further ado, поехали! Let's start in Dagestan. Fun fact, it's Russia's most ethnically and linguistically diverse republic. There are over 40 different ethnicities, some being as small as just a few villages. I started near Makhachkala, the capital and one of the fastest growing cities in Russia, but I didn't go into the city right away. I met up with Diana, and we set off for the mountains. This, by the way, is Diana. Throughout this adventure, I had a few specific people that made my trip just that much more perfect, and she was one of them. She became my window into Dagestan, and also into the general Caucasus. Her enthusiasm and positivity was contagious and made my first weeks here absolutely unforgettable. She has Caucasian roots herself, and is extremely happy to share her knowledge and love for Dagestan with all. If you are interested, you can even write her on Instagram, or plan a visit, and she will happily show you around. I'll put her Instagram in the description under this video. Feel free to check it out. My first meal wasn't too far out of the ordinary for Russia, but the cherry compote was perfectly sweet and not a tad too bitter. It came as an inconspicuous whisper at the abundance of delicious cherries and fruit to come in the next few weeks in the Caucasus. It was just a typical cafe in a small village, but the punctual Islamic chants ringing through the sun-baked streets were a reminder that I wasn't in Moscow anymore. We continued on to Barkhan Sarikum. I felt like I was suddenly dropped into Morocco. And they even had this little Moroccan booth set up for pictures. Maybe that's why. Surrounded by small mountains of sand, the sun beat down in earnest. Sarikum is an isolated desert that formed due to its haphazard position in the foothills. At least that's what the locals said. There were other folklore stories told about how it was built by an ancient leader, grain by grain with sand from the Caspian Sea to impress a girl. I'm not sure which one I believe, so I guess I'll let you decide on your own. It was so windy, I lost my brand new hat in just 5 minutes. It was a new record. Gone on the first day, but nothing could dampen my mood for long. Just look how amazing it is here. I even made some little lizard friends. He was quite the scamperer and could dig into the hot sand. I wish I could do that during the winters here in Russia. Next up was Sulak Canyon. This was a fun drive since we passed through a military complex to get past a big dam. Here's a boring black screen since I wasn't allowed to take photos. You can just use your imagination. With a few unexpected jokes from a smiling guard, I passed the inspection with ease and we set off up a bumpy and windy road. After a while, the nauseating curve started to get to me, but then the canyon hit me. The turquoise water was insane. It's slightly opaque, so even from down below, it looked more like Gatorade than water. I've never seen anything quite like it, but it made me want to drink it all. It's one of the deepest canyons in the world, so the view from the top was also unbelievably astounding. The next meal was fish, served kindly from my wonderful host and enjoyed happily by me, looking down on the silent canyon below. The wind was light and it was a beautiful day. Caucasian hospitality takes it to a whole new level. I'm not sure if it's even possible to fully understand until you have personally experienced it yourself. As a guest, there is no chance to ever be hungry or thirsty, not even for a moment. It is even harder to get lost or sleep somewhere uncomfortable. No thank you doesn't seem to be a part of their vocabulary. They just keep giving. No matter where you are, the second someone sees you, they offer a place to stay, food, tea, conversation, or anything in between. It's the most welcome I've ever felt in any place I've ever traveled. As a complete stranger, I felt like a close relative, and this turned out to be true no matter where I was in the Caucasus. We descended the rocky road to the river below and hopped on a boat. The side of the canyon walls were covered in thick green moss, and there were some tinkling waterfalls scattered about. The boat was so loud that I got a bit of a headache though, but the eye-catching beauty around was enough to distract me, and it didn't stay for long. I originally wanted to swim in the river, but after seeing and hearing the deafening roar of the current, I quickly changed my mind. Death was not on the menu today. We hopped on the back of some jeeps driven by locals to try to race to the top before sunset. And man, did we cruise. We were whipping back and forth, putting in every effort to dodge low tree branches and hold on to the rail for dear life as the driver zipped around curves and seemed to aim for every bump. I think he enjoyed our whoops of joy and acceleration, but it was a level of danger that may even be frowned upon in other parts of Russia, where such activities tend to be a bit more loosely regulated than what we see in the West. We made it to the top in time, but the jeep ride was more memorable than the cloud-covered sunset. After some tea, the ride down was even more insane. All the same shenanigans, but faster, downhill, and in the dark. Honestly, it was an amazing first day in Dagestan. Coffee is good, but coffee while looking down on all the beauty of Sulat Canyon on another wonderful day is even better. We continued along the upper ridge of the canyon back towards the main road. There were some precarious swings perched upon the edge of a steep cliff, which could only mean we had to stop for some fun. What a spooky feeling, swinging out over the hundreds of meters of air below. It gave some good pictures though. After exiting the canyon, we continued along the river, which was no less beautiful from below. It is surrounded by mountains covered in beautiful lush green grass and the sheep and cows of the local villages. It's like a fairy tale. We had some soup and dumpling that I just can't remember the name of, so if anyone knows, let me know in the comments. Also, these delicious cheesy bread things. If you want to lose weight on vacation, the Caucasus is the wrong place to go. The cheese in Dagestan was something I wasn't really used to either, even coming from Wisconsin. I thoroughly enjoyed the young Dagestani cheese, but the older cheese was preserved with salt, a lot of salt, and I found it to be quite dry and almost painful to eat. The tough part was deciphering the two by sight. I was a noob and had to try it to know. It's Dagestani roulette. By lunch, we made it to Tobat Waterfall. The waterfall was meh, just a slow tinkle, but the canyon was amazingly green and unforgettably picturesque. Two villages surround it on the upper ridge as the canyon opens out towards the horizon below. We did some fun picture taking with the waterfall and sat for a while, absorbing the beauty of the view. I really wanted to hike down below, decided against it. There was so much more to explore. Normally there is bungee jumping here, but due to a recent accident it was closed off. We continued on to a slot canyon. The lighting wasn't great being late in the day, but it was still beautiful. The thing I've noticed with Dagestan is that there's beauty everywhere. Wherever you look, it's stunning. Then you finally get to a tourist spot and the beauty is even more so. It's just unbelievable and unending. The next day, we found another slot canyon. This one was skinnier, and with the sunlight shining obliquely from the west side, one rock wall lit up and glowed while the other remained in shadow. The contrast was beautiful. The rocks were perfectly set for some low-risk climbing, but it was sandstone-like, so I didn't trust it for anything too scary. Heading out by midday, we got to a village high in the mountains. It was an ancient village that still exists today, yet it slowly moved from one part of the mountain across the valley to the other. The old buildings still stand. They were built of stone, and at a quick glance, they blend in well with the surrounding mountains. Look, can you even see it there? The village is quite independent. They farm or raise all they need to survive, and thus money isn't really needed. It can be used to buy luxurious things like salt or sugar, which are typically given as gifts. They buy these from down below. We climbed the old tower and got a breathtaking view of the modern part of the village across the valley. One of the locals even pointed out a cave up higher in the mountains where the sheep spend the winter. The doors in the village are still just as complexly beautiful as the doors down below. Caucasians typically spend a great deal of time and money on their front gate and door. It's the face of the house, and the first thing a guest sees is they are welcomed to your house. Hospitality is an ancient part of their culture. We ate lunch with a wonderful and generous family a bit down the mountain. They fed us so well, which is becoming a fattening theme. What stood out most was the homemade candies, pine cone jam, and urbach. Also, the daughter even showed me her pet mice, which was pretty neat. They love to run around and even tickle a little bit. Later on, we continued climbing with one goal in mind, the Troll's Tongue. After catching a ride from Winowazek, which is the bread-shaped Soviet off-roader car, we walked through a few old abandoned villages and even an old cemetery. This was my first time ever seeing an Islamic cemetery. The stones were old and broken, so I hoped to see a more modern one somewhere else. The gravestones are so complex and covered with writing. After a few more minutes, finally, there it is, the Troll's Tongue. It's an alluring wedge of rock protruding out over the stomach-twisting lack of rock between you and the valley floor below. The jaw-dropping view opens deep below in a deep lush green as a small river meanders through the far side of the valley. What a place for a photo shoot. Diana was even crawling out over the edge, dangling to get the good angles. What more could you ask for? We continued exploring the top of the ridge excitedly. There were many smaller tongues and some other ledges for the classic hanging off the edge picture. Don't worry, Mom, I was mostly being safe. That evening, we returned to the same place to stay. There were even more guests this time, and the family put on an amazing dance and music show. The granddad sang and played a guitar-like instrument that I just don't remember the name of. The suns were amazing too. Just watch them go. They taught us the most classic traditional Dagestani and Caucasian dance. Here, the woman acts as a swan and the man is an eagle. This dance is seen everywhere in the Northern Caucasus, but called many different names. I think it is beautiful in the most simplistic way. Just about anyone can do it, but some of course do it much better and much more beautifully. Here is a video of me dancing that I'll keep in, no matter how much I want to delete it. Enjoy a good laugh. In the morning, we were in another slot canyon that turned into a cave of sorts. The lighting was meh again, so it didn't have that magic of the last one. There were a lot of tourists here too. Later, we hiked up to an ancient and now abandoned village, way up in the mountains. It's called Gamsuto. It had just one remaining resident until a few years ago, when they died of old age. You can still see the house with much of the possessions remaining. There are 2 hills in the village that you can scramble up for an even more expansive view. We sent it south and made it to Derbent by evening. It was fun as we rolled out of the mountains a bit dirty and sweaty into this beautiful and clean ancient city. It's the oldest in Russia, if you don't count Crimea. We went for dinner at a restaurant that we thought was going to be a bit quiet and under the radar, but there was a full-blown party going on. There was even a belly dancer and some really good food, but I was still full from my meal 2 days ago. I even got to try out some of the dances that I learned the day before. All the other people there welcomed us to the party, and they wanted to dance with us. What a fun and memorable evening it was. The sun rises way too early, and we decided to go watch it. As tired as we were at 3:30 a.m., it was still quite a beautiful view rising up over the Caspian Sea. You could almost see Turkmenistan from there. A cute little stray cat snuggled up with me as the sun popped up, and we got to chill for a bit, even though both of us were fighting off the urge to nap. We wandered over to a cafe where Babusha got us some pastries and some tea. After regaining our energy, we explored the beach with some cows as the sun got higher and higher. There's an abandoned seaplane left on the beach after the fall of the Soviet Union, and this thing was massive. It was designed to fly just 20 meters above the water at extremely high speeds to avoid radar. It can also shoot nuclear missiles, so that's pretty neat, I guess. Now it's just chilling on the beach, so you can go up and check it out. It's quite imposing. Bogdan and I went swimming and talked to some more cows as they enjoyed the sun along with us. It's pretty cool how cows say moo no matter where you are in the world. We went to explore the historic fortress in Derbent, atop the hill looking over the city. It was an ancient, luxurious residence. There is so much to learn about the history and the lifestyles of the city below and of those who ruled it. and we had a tour guide who was extremely open and knowledgeable. Though, the things that stuck with me the most, for better or worse, were the ancient torture methods described, but I don't really want to talk about them here since we all might be a bit squeamish. We stopped by the market, and oh my, was it bustling. It felt like I was dropped into a film. So many interesting smells and colors, and foods I never knew existed. There was a cute old man who sold me some nuts and told me about the wonders of almonds on your health. He also gave me an extremely bitter almond that was supposed to keep me healthy for the next few weeks. I guess we'll see how that pans out in the next few videos. I bought some sour, unripe apricots that were quite yummy. There was also a one-eyed man who, after hearing my name, blessed me for an uncomfortably long time and gave me candies and lemons. If you didn't know, my name can be interpreted by some people in a holy way in Russian. I shared the candies with some kids playing football. There was no way one person could eat it all themselves. This evening, I parted ways with Diana, though we planned to meet up in Macleod. I went to explore Derbent a bit on my own and got absolutely soaked by a surprise rainstorm, my first one of the trip. Derbent is such a unique city, and it was pleasant to walk in. The remnants of the old wall still stand, and there's a road dedicated to the Dagestan rug selling. Rugs here are quite famous around Russia and in the rest of the world. I also love to see all the kids playing football outside. When they saw me with my backpack, they came in to investigate and say hello, and invited me to meet their parents. Later that day, I got to see a modern Islamic cemetery. They were gravestones from long, long ago, all the way up to modern times. What an interesting sight. I zooped back up the coast to Macleod and met up with Diana again. We ate at Dome 15. This was quite a hit place. It's definitely not what I would have expected in Dagestan before coming. She told me recently they took the pet goat out of the courtyard, but the cats still came to cuddle during our meals there. I appreciated the Aqua Discoteca themed restroom as well. Definitely check this place out if you ever come to Macleod. I spent a lot of my time there in a tired haze. I had been going non-stop for 7 days straight and I needed a calm day. I went for a walk and bought a new hat. Funnily enough, the lady told me that my wife will love this new hat when I bought it. I didn't have the heart to tell her that it was actually for me. I saw a big mosque and even went inside. There is the official mosque vacuumer, it seems. Later, I swam at the beach and got my energy back. The beach was an interesting and active place on this hot summer day. Combat sports are big here, so many young men were wrestling and fighting on the beach. Perhaps one of them will be the next Habib. After getting my fill of Dagestan, it was time to say goodbye. Upon leaving, I only had good things to say. Everything was stellar. The food, the views, and the people were unforgettable. I will definitely be coming back. But for now, adventure awaits. It's time to go to Chechnya. Who knows, maybe I'll even end up on the State News Network. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. A like wouldn't be too bad either. I make these videos for fun, so I hope you had some fun watching it as well.